Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. ESPN has weighed in on the elite talent in the NBA. How much do they think the Lakers have? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts, always free and never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with 21,000 subscribers to the channel, all of whom getting excited for the end of the preseason, including tonight's game against the Warriors at the Crypt, the preseason debut at the Crypt, Andy. For the Lakers, they'll play Sunday against Milwaukee as well. We'll find out who's going to play in tonight's game, but Andy, a lot of these fans are coming to see the elite talent that the Lakers have in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. We'll see if they end up playing tonight. But how much more elite talent do they have? ESPN has put out its annual NBA rank thing, some project that you and I used to do when we worked there. And the Lakers are reasonably well represented, I would say, in the top 100.
I think they are a really fascinating case of representation in the top 100 and kind of unique in their own right. ESPN just unveiled, I believe it was earlier today, the top 10. You know, they break this up in increments leading from 100 in terms of the ranking in the NBA all the way up to 1. And Anthony Davis came in at 10. Mm-hmm. LeBron at 9, and then from there, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis. The Lakers, as it turns out, I did a bunch of weeding through the top 100. They were the only team in the league with 2 players in the top 10, and to some degree, it's a little bit arbitrary, meaningless, however you want to put it, in the sense that there can be the distance between, say, 7 and 10, 10 and 13, whatever, could be pretty arbitrary. Devin Booker, for example, is number 11, which means Phoenix has 2 guys just outside the top 10, 1 in, 1 out. Giannis is number 1. Dame came in at 14. Mm-hmm. But at least in terms of the way this goes, the Lakers are the only team with 2 in the top 10. From there, the only other guy they have that cracked the top 100 was Austin Reaves at 66. I know you and I both thought maybe there was a chance D'Angelo Russell could sneak into the top 100, but he didn't. And it just got both of us thinking about the idea of not looking to debate who came out where. And
no, because I mean, like you say, like and functionally speaking, the 10th best player in the league might play like the 6th best player in the league for a stretch of time. Like this stuff
I play like the best player in the league at the time.
He could. And it's really like tiers of players and where guys fit.
Right. And just where the Lakers, as far as this ESPN panel of NBA analysts, they're ranking, they're scouring the league, how the Lakers stack up against other teams around the league. And when I went through the rankings, this is some of the stuff that I found that was interesting. There's only 1 team in the league with 3 players in the top 30, and that was Boston. Jason Tatum at 6, Jaylen Brown at 19, Drew Holiday at 26, plus Kristaps Porzingis at 62. There were, as far as teams with 3 players in the top 50, Donovan Mitchell at 15, Darius Garland at 36, Evan Mobley at 40, for Cleveland, plus Jared Allen in the top 50. He came in just at 50. Milwaukee had Giannis at 1.
Reminds me of why, by the way, I sometimes think people don't pay enough attention to Cleveland. That's just side note. We don't do a ton of Eastern Conference here, but I think that's a pretty good team.
Yeah, there's questions about whether or not the talent fits together and can be maximized, but as far as whether or not they have talent, the answer is clearly yes. But continuing with the idea of teams that have at least 3 players in the top 50, Phoenix had Durant, Booker, as like I said, at 11, plus Brad Beal at 37. Milwaukee, Giannis number 1, Dame 14, Chris Middleton at 46 plus, Brooke Lopez at 69, Bobby Portis at 81. Philadelphia, this was interesting. They have 3 guys. Joel Embiid at number 3, Tyrese Maxey at 42, and they have Harden at 43, which I think in reality is low for Harden, but the Harden of it all dinged him, let's just say.
God, man, where do you put I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but yes, difficult guy to rank.
Right. Plus they have Tobias Harris at 83. Memphis went through something similar. Jaren Jackson Jr. was their highest guy at 31 with Ja at 35.
Right. And like Denver is an interesting case here because they've got 4 guys in the top 100.
Yeah. Denver just missed having 3 guys in the top 50. They've got Jokic at 2, Jamal Murray at 17, and Aaron Gordon came in at 51, plus Michael Porter Jr. at 68. The teams with the most players in the top 100 were both a little bit surprising to me. One was the Warriors, with Steph at 5, Clay at 41, Wiggins at 54, Draymond Green at 55, Chris Paul at 76, Kevon Looney, which I kind of like the recognition, at 88. And then the other team, Brian, the Knicks, Jalen Brunson at 32, Julius Randle at 45, RJ Barrett at 71, Josh Hart at 91, Quickly at 92, and Mitchell Robinson at 100. So, and there's other teams like Miami has 2 players in the top 20.
Right. I mean, but like
Timberwolves 2 in the top 20. Sacramento just missed. They have 22 and 23. But It's an interesting way, I think, of just looking at the Lakers compared to the rest of the league and just asking the question, do they have enough when you start thinking about stacking up against the elites?
But like, you talk about like Emmanuel Quickly and Mitchell Robinson making these rankings. By the way, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Like having a bunch of guys, 35 and up is helpful. I mean, Knicks should be a playoff team and all that. But, I think what we have learned in the NBA is you do need a certain level of elite talent to get through. So like, would you rather have 4 guys, 3 guys between 90 and 100, which is what the Knicks have, or 2 guys in the top 10? And I think the answer is 2 guys in the top 10. And
especially when you take into account like the difference between, say, even if you think Quickly is better than D'Angelo Russell or Rui Hachimura, the difference between them isn't that great.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at too, is as you move further away from the most elite talent, anybody who's ever done like a fantasy draft can tell you that, it's pretty clear cut who the best players are. Once you get into like the 4th round of whatever sport, you're just like, all of these people look the same to me. And, so that, when you start breaking things down in tiers. So, to me, I felt like the Lakers have 4 guys who I think are arguably in the top 100. Do you want to, we could have a debate as to whether or not, D'Angelo Russell is better than Mitchell Robinson. We could have a discussion. I don't want to have that discussion. Someone can have that discussion. So if you look at it, like the Lakers have 4 guys in that group. 2 of them are super elite. But I think even more than that, there's another way to really break this down when you look at the Lakers roster that is related to this NBA rank thing, but also directly related to the question you're asking, which is, do they have enough in terms of like what depth looks like? And so I want to get into that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can enjoy this NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers, you bet just $5 and you get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, futures, all sorts of different options. Plus, if you bet, again, just $5, all customers get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So this is indeed the best time to join FanDuel. The app is really easy to use. It's a lot of fun. All these different options at your fingertips. And of course, there are NBA props that you can bet on. Opening night, the Lakers are, as of this recording, 5.5-point dogs on the road against the Nuggets and chatty Mike Malone. LeBron James is a 50-1 bet to win MVP. Anthony Davis, 30 to 1 for MVP, getting a little bit of respect, even though he was 10 and LeBron was 9 in the ESPN's ranking. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and enjoy the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
Okay, so ideally, you have a good mix of elite talent and, semi-elite talent. Like if you're in the top 100 in the NBA, you are in the top, 17% or whatever of NBA players. Like that's what we're talking about here in a league of 450 players, give or take, and you're in the top 100. That's pretty good company to be in. And so like a team like this is why people think Denver is really good, despite losing Bruce Brown and Jeff Green and some depth there. They've still got 4 players who absolutely you look at and say like, well, that guy's being like Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, who could probably be a little better this year, a year away from that injury, plus Aaron Gordon, who is really good, and Michael Porter Jr., who's also pretty excellent, and you probably be able to see that more on a team with fewer stars.
Plus KCP is just on the border of being a top 100 guy.
And he's hyper relevant to the type of thing to where I'm going here. That's why people consider them to be really good. That is a lot of top end talent, because it's not just do you have elite talent or do you have semi-elite, sort of elite adjacent talent, the top, somebody who could make, if there were 3 all-star teams, so could you be a third team on a full all-star team, go down to 50 or 60 players in the league. It also matters how many players do you have who are above average or better, because remember, half the league is below average by definition. So if you can put out a bunch of players in your rotation who are average or better, then you're going to be a pretty good team. And you look at the Lakers, obviously, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Austin Reaves are in the top 100, and I don't think people are going to be arguing about that. D'Angelo Russell is pretty close. Rui Hachimura is better than average. I think
Vincent is better than average.
Is at least average or better. I mean, I think he's better than average, but I think he's average or better. Jared Vanderbilt is average or better. Like, I think,
Christian Wood with his head screwed on and, with the right priorities.
Average or better. No question. And so you're starting, Max Christie has the potential. I say we're going to try to get to Christie maybe because John Hollinger had some really interesting stuff that he wrote about him this week for The Athletic. If Max Christie jumps to average in terms of all of a sudden Lakers have another, that is
Torian Prince is an above average.
Average or better. I would say above average. But
he absolutely is.
That's right. I agree. You start to stack those players on top of themselves, and then you get into how well do they fit together. And I think so the Lakers have high-end elite talent. They've got maybe slightly less of that next level than the Denver Nuggets, but their entire rotation is average or better, as far as I can tell.
No, I agree.
That means your team is very good.
Well, it's what we talked about in yesterday's show, like comparing this team versus the 2020 championship team, which was obviously a really well-constructed roster for the way that team wanted to play. But this team, I think, has more skill players. Like, they are deeper in guys who can do a little bit more of the starry stuff, even if they really are closer to being role players than they are stars. Mm-hmm. And that makes a difference. That 2020 team, other than Kuzma, they really didn't have a lot of guys who could perform star tasks as role players. Every now and then Danny Green could bust out a 25-point game, or like Dwight would have a 20-10, something like that. Alex Caruso, his defense obviously mattered, but this was back when Caruso could barely score and often didn't seem to even try to score. The Lakers have more guys who can do things associated with stars, and especially with LeBron getting older, that matters a lot D'Angelo Russell, Brian, maybe if he makes good on his vow to improve his defense, he will rank next year in the top 100.
Excellent seg, Andy. Way to move off of one topic and on to another. For people who might have missed this, D'Angelo Russell, after the game on Wednesday, I believe it was talking about his defense. Mike Bresnahan at Spectrum Sportsnet was talking to him about it. He had a couple of good defensive plays in the first half, a deflection. I think he had a block shot.
He did have a block.
And D'Lo was very frank about recognizing that his defense got him played off the floor in the playoffs last year, particularly against the Nuggets. I would also argue the fact that he was shooting about 7% didn't help. But the basic premise is the tolerance for defensive problems goes down as the offense goes down too. So you don't leave yourself much wiggle room. And he was very said, I gotta turn that narrative around and be a plus offensively and make people understand that at the very least, I'm not a liability on defense. And that's what will keep me on the floor.
It's really similar to the exchange that he and I had during media day when I asked him about, because during his exit interview, he was, I thought, very interestingly candid in the way he talked about knowing who he is as a player and the things that he can excel at and the things that he really can't, and the can't pretty much revolves around elite athleticism that he doesn't have. And in D'Lo's mind, and I don't think he's wrong, a lot of those defensive issues do come down to athleticism. Not all of them, but some of them. Mm-hmm. So I asked him during media day, like a couple weeks ago, during the offseason, did you work more on becoming even better at your strengths, or did you look to show up your weaknesses? And, I think he knew what I was addressing. And he said, defensively, I can't really get any faster. That's not something that's going to happen. I'm not really going to get exceedingly quicker. That's not who I am as an athlete. But there is an onus on me to be smarter defensively, to be more aware, to be more accountable. And he said, I want to make sure that if nothing else, I'm not hurting anything. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that's really what he said. And in the preseason, at least, it seems like he's really meant those things that he said. He's been far more engaged, beyond just successful. He's looked really engaged in these first three games.
Yeah, I think he gets it. I'd have to go back and really look at it and compare to last year. I don't necessarily think he was dogging it, but
no, but I think is similar to the way I think Russell Westbrook's defensive issues, a lot of it are about pure engagement. I think for D'Lo, I think with Russ, it becomes more pronounced because he has more athleticism and could be a better defender. The ceiling on Russ defensively is more self-imposed by Russell Westbrook as opposed to.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree.
As opposed to limitations that D'Lo can't help.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And he can maximize what he, the skill set he has, which is a lot of length. He's pretty strong and all that kind of stuff. But the awareness, look,
his hands have been super active in the preseason.
I think so. There's, first of all, he's playing really well offensively, and when you're flowing offensively, you're in that groove defensively. All that's it's a lot easier to play good defense and attentive defense when you're in a huge good space on the other end of the floor too. But it's just, he is a guy, for all the talk of the good vibes with the Lakers and excited to be back and all of these things, understands that this is a resetting moment in his career. We talked about it with Christian Wood. If Wood can't establish genuine value with the Lakers, it's going to be hard for him to establish real value beyond a sort of a minimum deal with anyone, because good teams will be he couldn't figure that out, with that structure and those players and that opportunity. And at 28 years old, what bad team why give him minutes? So but D'Angelo, it's a similar situation for him, only, advanced way forward, for a guy far better. It's not like D'Lo's going to drop out of the league, but if he ever wants to bust back into that space where he's making 25, 28, 30, whatever it might be, and increase his value up over 17, 18, 19 million, first world problems, I understand. he has to show that he is playable throughout a playoff series and multiple playoff series, because otherwise people aren't going to want to give him that money, because he's not going to be paid on potential anymore, because he's old enough now where that's not going to happen.
Right. And, the last thought on D'Lo, it sort of occurred to me yesterday during the show when we had that extended conversation about D'Lo and his contract, is a 1+1. And there's always been a narrative, and I think there's some accuracy to it, that this was a short-term commitment from the Lakers, even though I think they genuinely wanted him back. Mm-hmm. And like the idea of, D'Lo potentially not being able to get more of a commitment. The flip side of it is he's almost 28 now. If he plays really well over the next couple of years, it actually serves him better to only be on a 2-year deal, because he can re-enter free agency in his prime.
He can opt out. The Lakers still would have his bird rights because it's a 2-year deal, and all of that stuff. And
or even if he played out the 2 years and then went into free agency.
For sure. But I mean, if it's a really good year this year, he probably doesn't play out the second year. Or at the very least, it becomes a conversation. Yeah, I mean, he's betting on himself to some degree, and he's giving I don't think he wanted a 4-year deal at something he would say is below market value, might be too much, but at the low end of market value, and locking that in for a long. It's not like, again, D'Angelo Russell's going to get a contract in next year and the year after and whatever. He's in no danger of falling out of the league. So yeah, you're right. He's betting on himself. The Lakers are betting on Max Christie. Is that a good bet? We'll talk about it next. So at the Athletic, Andy, John Hollinger, who I know a lot of basketball fans hate, boo, John Hollinger, boo. But it's a really interesting column he's got up about players who you probably haven't heard of, who could have a real significant impact on the league this year, and particularly on good teams. He mentions Peyton Watson as a potential guy who could step in and fill in some of that depth that we were talking about, that the Nuggets lost. Christian Brown is considered, the next guy to be like, their sixth man and kind of ascend in that way. But Watson had some good moments with them last year and is in position to be able to do more. And there's a guy on the Thunder whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, Zaire Williams on the Grizzlies, and Jalen McDaniels on the Raptors, and Najee Marshall on the Pelicans. Like players that if you're steeped in the league, you know who these people are, but you don't even have to be all that casual to not know who Jalen Johnson is on the Hawks. I mean, that's
100% sure I know who he is. I know of him.
I play in the most aggressive fantasy basketball league, I think, in America. So I know who everyone is. I really do.
I think I'm vaguely aware of who he is, but if the man walked past me,
I don't know what he looks like. I just know who he is.
Right.
But I mean, especially because it's a keeper league, we are acutely aware of anybody who has like 7 minutes of good time on the floor. They get picked up really quick. Anyway, Max Christie is on that list. And as I was saying before, the basic, he points to Christie's incredible leap from one summer league to the next summer league, and the position he's in, because the Lakers, he is their most natural backup too. He's in position to get real playing time.
One could argue he's their only natural backup.
Hollinger does, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's Christie going from promising rookie 19-year-old who did some interesting stuff to legit average or better NBA player. Again, people thumb their nose at average. Don't. If the 8th, 9th, 10th guy in your rotation is average, your rotation is awesome.
Yeah.
That is a massive kind of game changer for the Lakers.
Yeah. Thinking about Christie and his preseason, I thought game 3 was his worst of the
agree.
3. He had a couple really bad breaks. There was a sequence where he went up for a dunk, clearly got hit in the face by whoever it was that was challenging him.
Harrison Barnes, I believe.
And Christie got called for an offensive. Then on the trip back down, Christie was challenging a drive, got hit in the face, whoever was driving with the guy's off arm, and Christie got called. And it was just sort of that kind of night for him. And I think there have been times during the preseason, especially with, I think guys in and out of the lineup, like, the LeBrons, the ADs, the Reaves, I think it affects Christie a lot because he gets into like a push-pull between slotting very naturally into a defined role versus the being asked to do more like he was in Summer League. And he excelled in Summer League, but what he did there is not what he's going to be asked to do on this team. And I think at times that has been difficult for him as somebody who's a relatively inexperienced player. But what I do love about Christie is he's pretty unflappable, even when you can see him getting frustrated, and he competes. I mean, he just competes. And like, he's one of those guys that when he's out there, you can feel the effort, like in a good way. Like you can feel that competitive engagement. And, we've said it all summer, his work ethic gets praised a lot by everybody who is in the building. Like they love it. They love his maturity. They love his intelligence, and they believe in him.
For sure. I saw, and I can't remember if it was on Twitter or the comments page on YouTube. Somebody was critical because, like, why are they having him handle the ball so much and initiate all that stuff? Like, to your point about kind of doing more stuff when some of these guys are missing. And like that, I think that's the whole point. Like, you have preseason opportunities to let him stretch. And so when I watch him play, I'm trying to judge it based almost exclusively on the stuff that I think he's going to be doing in the regular season. I mean, if I'm a big Max Christie fan, if the Lakers end up relying on him to do like Austin Reaves stuff, it probably means Reaves got hurt and other guys are hurt. And a lot of
Christie broke out. I mean, look, nobody would have expected Austin Reaves' leap last year.
Or Christie makes such a gigantic leap. But I mean,
you're always looking at the negative of these scenarios. You never think about the other side.
Do you think it's more realistic that Max Christie ascends into the top 100 this year, or that it takes maybe 2 more years?
I had asked you heading into last year, do you think it's realistic that Austin Reaves will ascend into the top 100? You would not.
I would have said it was unrealistic, but I would have said that Reaves was further ahead because he had showed signs. Reaves' play was better before he broke out,
but it also
than Christie's, and it's not
also helped that he played on such a crappy team. He got to do more stuff.
But he still played better. He was far better than Christie was last year. He just was.
But you would not have seen Reaves as a top
100 player. I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about Christie becoming, kind of an average player, which would be a big leap and a really impressive one. I'm not asking him to go, to do something freakish. If he does that, if he's relied on to play such a big role, probably not necessarily, but probably means things have gone a little off the rails in terms of who's available and who isn't. But
it certainly would upset the projections for the season. That is correct. Yes.
I mean, I at the risk of sounding negative, but assuming more or less the people who are supposed to be playing play more or less as much as we think they're going to play, then Christie's going to be asked to do a very specific set of things. And thus far, I think even in the preseason, he's shown the ability to do those things pretty effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in a perfect, realistic world, you're looking at Christie playing around 15-ish minutes a night, which is significant. And I think he is ready for 15 minutes a night. And to Hollinger's point, and the point you and I have both made too, it's important that he is, because forget whether or not you think Cam Reddish can contribute for this season or not. He really is more of a 3 than a 4. Like no matter how high or low you are on Cam Reddish, like he is more of a natural small forward than he is a 2.
Yeah, no question. And what Christie's going to be asked to do is defend, which he can do. He's going to be asked to spot up and take threes, which he can do. and he's going to be asked to attack in specific context. He's not going to be asked to initiate the offense. He's not going to be asked to be a primary or really even a secondary distributor and stuff like that. He's going to be asked to make the right pass, but that's different. Those are all things that in that role, and I think he will intellectually understand what he's being asked to do. So I think he's set up to be one of those guys that if you go back in March and April to look at Hollinger's list and be like, I wonder which of those guys actually had an impact that he mentioned. I think there's a really good bet that Christie is one of the guys where you say, yes, he did.
Absolutely. And that would be very, very good for this team moving forward.
No question. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see us, our faces, and hang out with 21,000 subscribers to the channel. Leave questions, leave comments. We love to use them on the show. We will see every game Friday night, game Sunday night. We'll see everybody next time.